Welcome back to the Saffron podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the grocery list. So, when we left you last, we were talking about the app that we were pretty much almost done with. And what we did in the past week was finish up pretty much most of the programming with it. And we're getting ready to release it both to the iOS and the Android store. So right now, the basic thing that we're working on with that is pretty much just getting the listings ready. So creating screenshots for them, adding descriptions, icons, all that fun stuff that you have to do to market your app on the Play Store, we're doing. And then after that, we're going to be working on the next big feature for Saffron. And we were thinking about a lot of different things, and we decided to go forth and start on the grocery list feature of Saffron. So we're going to be talking about some of the things that we want to build out with this and what we're thinking about. So right here, what you're looking at is a chart of the grocery list features that came to our mind of things that would be useful to have. So I'm kind of just going to catch you up on what we have here and then talk about some things that we're thinking about next for it and how we might implement some of these things. So the first thing is when we're adding a item to our grocery list. So we might be adding stuff from a recipe. So I might want to add all my ingredients from a single recipe, and I might do this for each recipe I'm going to cook in a week, for example. So it's handy to be able on your grocery list to know where all your ingredients are coming from. So I can see where some of my ingredients are from recipe A, whereas my other ingredients are from recipe B. And then being able to, if possible, delete all the recipes. Let's say you don't, or not all the recipes, but the ingredients for a recipe. If I choose, I'm no longer going to make chicken soup this week, I can remove all the ingredients off my list that are from chicken noodle soup, which is what we were talking about by deleting all from a recipe. The second thing is when you add an ingredient to the grocery list, it's handy while in the store to have that categorized. So under different things. So this is something we want to automate, but also let the user pick. But it could be, for example, dairy or produce. And so when I add carrots, it automatically goes under the produce section. And if I add cheese, it automatically goes under dairy and that sort of thing, and kind of sections in our grocery list. The next thing is going over combining ingredients. So this is where I have multiple recipes and they all use cheese. So instead of seeing I need cheese in 5 different places, we see that cheese is one single item and we can see the total number of cheese that we need to buy. Or in this case, I guess carrots is a better example. If I need to buy 12 carrots for all my recipes, for example. We already talked about this, so this is deleting all of your recipe, the ingredients for that particular recipe. The next thing is grouping by aisle. So this is slightly different than category. This is kind of where it is in your store. So like in different grocery stores, they're in different locations. So this is kind of where you can find the items in the grocery store. The next thing is grocery delivery, so places like Instacart. So we're thinking it's possible to be able to create your grocery list in Saffron, and then we send your grocery list off to a place that'll have it delivered to you. So for example, Instacart. Next one is multiple lists, so that's grocery lists that are split into different kinds. So like for example, I might shop at one store and I get most of my ingredients, but I get some other ingredients at different stores. So being able to split your grocery list into multiple, that way you can segregate, if you will, kind of where you're getting your items from. The next thing is a template. So you might buy certain ingredients every week, or maybe you have like starter templates. These are just like some things that you can automatically add a bunch of stuff to your grocery list ingredients for. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the pantry starter ingredient list. So that's kind of where, hey, give me all the ingredient essentials, if you will, olive oil and whatnot that you would need no matter what you're cooking, sort of thing. And then lastly, being able to share your grocery list to other users or within your family or whatnot. So those are kind of some of the features that we have going on here. And Mom, do you want to talk about what we kind of are thinking about to be able to implement all these features?
Well, in my mind, I always look at the end, how I want the app to work, and the grocery list is definitely geared to being used on an app. And you've created a little prototype for me that I've been using for a while, so I've gotten to really see the pros and cons of having a grocery list on your phone and checking things on and off easily, seeing things easily, all those things we're going to be concerned with. But the thing we've been going back and forth on that I thought might be good to revisit again is the parsing of the ingredient items, because depending upon how that is put into Saffron, I want to be able to view that content in a lot of different ways. Not only for the grocery list feature, but for future features like scaling and some of the other things we want to do. So for the grocery list, for example, it's most important to know what the ingredient is. So I might want to know that I need to get cinnamon. It doesn't matter to me how much initially. I need to know with cinnamon first and then the amount. So I want the list to be a really clean list that you can quickly look at in the grocery store. And if you have it arranged by category and by aisle, all those things are really going to help somebody have a much better experience in the store. So anyway, in order to have that great experience, if we could talk about the parsing and from a programming standpoint, what is the best way to have the ingredients input so that it can be parsed properly, and how much involvement should the user get in reviewing the parsing so that they get an accurate grocery list or scaling feature.
So I want to first just go over quickly what we mean by parsing and why that's even needed. So depending on what features we implement, we might need it and we might not need it. So take these two examples up here. So being able to combine an ingredient. So let's say we have cheese in one recipe and cheddar cheese in another recipe and Parmesan cheese in a third recipe. So we need to know those are three different cheeses, and we need to know that we should not combine those, right? But we do want to combine everything, for example, all the cheddar cheeses together. And this problem kind of is multifaceted. So you might want to buy almonds, and you may want to buy roasted almonds, and you may want to buy barbecue roasted almonds. So we need to know when should we combine those ingredients and treat them as the same ingredient, and when we should separate them. So should we combine roasted and regular almonds together, or should we not? So the idea behind parsing is to take the keyword from the particular, basically the name or the whatever is written on the recipe, and grab what is the most important. So if someone has chopped carrots, for example, chopped may not be, like if you have chopped carrots in one recipe and whole carrots in another recipe, should you combine those together? So one way we're thinking about doing that is basically parsing out the names or the key ingredient in each line of a recipe. So chopped carrots with the keyword there, or we would parse that and get the keyword out, which would be carrot. And the same thing for if we had a whole carrot, we'd then get carrot out of that. And so then we can combine those amounts. And then if we have these keywords for the ingredient, we can kind of start grouping them into categories. So if I know the keyword carrot should go under, for example, produce, then I can put chopped carrots under produce. I can put whole carrots under produce, and I can do diced under produce. You know, all the variations you might get in a recipe. I know I can combine those all together and to put them into category. So the real problem comes is how fine should the keywords be, and how do you parse them to get the best result, and how much do you show the user about it. So for example, there's no way for us to be perfect, and there's no way for us to satisfy all users, because some users might want it to parse differently than other users. So some people might want the roasted almonds to be combined in with their regular almonds, whereas others don't. And you know, now roasted almonds and almonds are just an example. There's lots of different stuff. For example, chicken breast or chicken thighs. Is the keyword chicken, or should it be chicken thighs? And should that be different from raw chicken thighs, for example? And there's kind of all these different variations that you can get on these ingredients. And so we kind of need to set up a way that we have kind of a base list or a base, like generally decent keywords that we can pick out, and then I'll let the user I don't know if letting the user add to that list is the best idea, or if just letting them modify it. But like, for example, let's say we parse something incorrectly. We want to allow the user to go in and change that. And we kind of need to decide, they've identified the parsing is wrong. So let's say that when we have roasted almonds, we parse that out to just almonds. And really we should parse it to roasted almonds. So the user goes in and corrects it to roasted almonds. Should that user in every other situation have it parsed out to roasted almonds, right? Or should it just in that scenario be parsed out to almonds is kind of what we need to ask ourselves. And really we need to kind of play with it and see what comes out to be the best. So what I'm leaning towards right now of trying and then as kind of a starting point and then working on it more is allow the user to modify. We'll show them what we parsed and allow them to change it. And then at least at the beginning, they can go in and modify it. But if they want to permanently modify it, I'm not sure if that scenario is going to come up, how often that'll come up, and how necessary it will. Because maybe do we do it on an individual basis, or if we need to just modify the whole entire algorithm altogether is the question, I guess. So we kind of need to talk with different users and test it ourselves and see what the best way, because the problem that's going to come up with this is we're not going to be able to do it perfectly, and each user is going to have a different thing that they want. So I think no matter what we choose, the most important part with it is to make it customizable so someone can set it up to where stuff is grouping the way they want it to group and is getting combined the way they want it to be combined, I guess. For me, that's I think something we should focus on, because getting it right ourselves is going to be more difficult. I think the customization is really going to push the feature to a better direction, if that makes sense.
It does, and that's something that I had experience with when you were doing some prototypes for me, is how often that keyword needed to just be tweaked a little bit. Most of the times it would be pretty close, but you'd want to adjust it just a little bit, especially when you start to understand how you're going to be using it for the grocery list. So initially a user may not understand why we're parsing or how parsing works. And I was wondering whether or not, do you want to have that view of the parsing of the ingredients and the amounts and the keywords and all that be something optional that they can click on and actually see? Or is it something you think should flow in from once you save the ingredients, you see the parsing list and let them look at it, and then they have to save it in order to save the ingredients?
So the flow that I like, and this is something I'm seeing a lot happening with just developer tools right now, is to have a really good default and then allow people to customize it if they need to. So what that means in our scenario is the user doesn't have to touch anything or change anything with parse if they don't want to. We'll do that for them, and we'll try to get a good default values. But if they want to, they can then go in and see what the parsed values is and be able to customize the values of those. So I don't want to force the user to have to look at those or to have to use them, but only if they want to or they want to improve it. Now there's kind of a downside to that though. Maybe when they're using the product, things aren't working how they, stuff might not be grouping how they expect it. So we just need to make sure to have clear messaging, like you have the ability to customize this if you want to get more accurate results, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, I didn't clearly understand how the parsing impacted the grocery list until I started using it. And then when I started seeing how the list came together, sometimes I would have more information than I needed. Sometimes it was grouped differently than I would have. But then it helped me understand the next time when I look at a recipe coming in and I'm looking at the parse ingredients, what I want. So I think people will catch on pretty quickly to it, and I think they'll like being able to tweak it and customize it so that their lists get closer to what they need in the store.
Yeah, but definitely when users are first trying the product, it's going to be very foreign and very weird if we start showing them keywords and parsed versions of stuff, because like you said, no one's really used to that, especially if you're a cook and you're not very tech savvy. That might be weird. Why are we breaking it out that way? But as you use the product more and as you try the grocery list out, I think they'll start to see also that, hey, this is grouping in an interesting way. How can I change this, or how can I modify it? And then it kind of makes sense. I can make this easier, or I can do it in a different way, and I'll get different results in the grocery list sort of thing.
I agree. I think they're going to like it.
Yeah, so I think that's something we're going to definitely take a lot of tuning to get correct, but that at least gives us a starting point of what we can try. So to recap, we're going to basically, how I plan on doing it is basically have a list of ingredients that are keywords basically that I want to pick out of the recipes, and then I'll use those keywords and we'll categorize and combine ingredients based on that keyword. And then we're going to have to think about what's the best way to allow the user to customize these things as we do it. And maybe it makes sense when we're first trying it to, put the product out there, put the grocery list out there, and basically add on, see how it is without letting them customize it. Mm-hmm. How often is it wrong? How bad is it when it's wrong? And how can we kind of smooth out these issues is one way too.
There's a lot of specialized products. If you look at flour right now, or even butter, there's so many different types of flours out there. There's so many different types of diets. So it can get really complicated, the parsing the different types of lists. So again, keeping them in a general category of flour, keeping it as broad as possible early on, I think is going to be better. And then, but letting them be able to see specifics on that recipe when they need to.
Yeah, we definitely need escape hatches / we basically need to expect failure with this sort of feature. And so 90% of the ingredients, this is also one of those features where it'll work well for not 80-90% of the ingredients, but then there's going to be those weird ingredients that are in recipes, or there's going to be odd stuff that's going to throw it off. And so we need to have good methods to handle it when those things happen and come up.
Absolutely. The other thing I was going to mention is the prepping, or the preparation for the ingredient. It's real popular nowadays in your ingredient list to have how that ingredient is being used rather than having it spelled out in the ingredients. In the instructions. So for example, if you want a cup of onions, it may tell you to slice it, chop it, or however the preparation is, rather than going into detail in the instructions to chop and all that. So when you're shopping, sometimes it's good to know, are they chopped or sliced? There's a lot of packaged produce, for example, that you can buy ahead of time that may be a time saver you may want to buy. So if you just saw 1 cup onion on your grocery list and you don't know how it's being prepared, or for example, cabbage is another good one that is, there's pre-made bags of cabbage and things like that, rather than buying a whole head of cabbage. And we talked about hiding or letting the user in the grocery list be able to see that preparation. Can we still accommodate that? Because I think that's something that you're not going to want to see that on every item. So it's really overkill when you see the preparation on your grocery list for every item, because it makes the list extremely tedious and it's much harder to read. But I do like the idea of some kind of switch or some way of being able to turn on and off the details of the ingredients that might be helpful when you get to a certain item.
So to answer that, I kind of want to look at an example of what this looks like. So right now I have pulled up an all recipes recipe, and this is where they actually do all right. So for example, one of their ingredients is called 1 clove of garlic minced, or 1 large eggplant halved lengthwise. None of these are too long, and I don't think I would hate seeing that on my grocery list. But the problem gets when you see some places, they have really long ingredients. So take this. So for example, it says bone-in chicken thighs, skin removed, or do all drumsticks. Or this one is tablespooned, unrefined, extra virgin olive oil, or avocado oil. So it has a very long, basically, ingredient or section for that. And so on your grocery list, it can get quite cluttered if you're doing recipes like this where their ingredients are really long. So what should we do as Saffron? Should we show the full ingredient, like how they entered it? Or should we only see the keyword? So for example, on chicken thighs here, let's say we parse out the keyword chicken thighs. So on the grocery list, we can just say you want 5 bone-in chicken thighs or 5 chicken thighs. Or should we show on the grocery list 5 bone-in chicken thighs, skin removed, or do all the drumsticks? So it's kind of, sometimes you want to see the whole thing, sometimes you don't, and it really just depends on the recipe, how much junk that they put in the actual ingredient name itself or in the ingredient section. So one way we're thinking about this is to kind of to accommodate both these cases, because you might have recipes that are different. And so some do this, some don't. So to start, we're thinking we show just the keyword. So in this case, I'd only show chicken thighs, or depending on what we use for the keyword, should we have, so this is another example, should we have bone-in chicken thighs be the keyword here? Or should chicken thighs be the keyword? So that's another place where, I don't know, we need to think about that. But we're going to say, let's say chicken thigh is the keyword. We show the word chicken thigh, but then we let the user, like we have a button or something that they can click and expand so they can see the entire thing if they need to. So they can see this chicken thigh is bone in, or the chicken thigh could be a drumstick if we want, right? And you could replace it. So we kind of want to hide the extra details at first, but let the user click on it to kind of expand. So that's what we're planning on doing, is kind of a mix to be able to handle these different use cases of recipes that have varying ingredients and the way that they display those ingredients.
I think that sounds awesome, because I have been in the store and I have wanted to know more detail, and I don't need to see it all the time. So I like that option for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that kind of, we're then more accommodating.
The other thing I was hoping we could talk a little bit more about is the use case of how people are shopping nowadays. There are some people that are doing their own grocery shopping. There are some people that are actually using services for delivery that you want to send your list to. You may actually have someone else in your family picking up your grocery list, your items from a grocery list. So how do you see maybe families, let's just focus on the family, say that there's a list for items needed for dinner and your son's on his way home and he can pick up the stuff at the store. How would your son get that list so that he could do the shopping for you?
So I think that is something good to have in the product at some point. But notice when you said that, you said some people are going to want this. Some people are doing it this way. Some people are doing it that way. So there's a lot of different ways that people are utilizing grocery lists. And so I think we should start off with a base that is can be used for a lot of different things, and then kind of specialize it from there. And so sharing grocery lists, I think, is a very good thing to have, but I don't think everyone's going to need to share a grocery list. And I don't think it's that bad if we don't have something explicit or a feature specifically for it at first. And then let's say we have more people actually using the grocery list and now they're wanting to share it. We can add that feature into it. But I kind of want to get people trying the base of it first and seeing, do they like if we build out the sharing of the grocery list and all this other stuff, and then kind of we're thinking is the core of it is this combining by ingredient, grouping by category. If they're not liking that part, then we don't even have to worry about them sharing the grocery list. I kind of want to build the base of it first, let people use that, and then after that, we're going to start seeing people, maybe sharing is important to them, but maybe other things are even more important to them. And so I kind of want to build the base of it first, and then kind of get more into the niche ways that people would use a grocery list and add those features for them then. Because we might be a product that more families are using. Mm-hmm. Or we might be a product where more people are not even doing their own grocery shopping. And so there's not even a need to share them with their grocery list with other people. They're sharing their grocery list to Instacart.
So would you look at this as maybe at the same time when you're looking at delivery features as well? I mean, maybe at that point after you get, we talked about maybe the first 5 items on this list as being our priority for the first release of our grocery list. Maybe that's in the next tier.
So yeah, we haven't talked about this yet, but on the right here we put priorities. And the way I list them at the beginning is kind of the priority that they're in. And so what we're thinking right now is up until, we're not going to include group by aisle, at least in the initial version. We're thinking the top part is going to be what we're going to start with. And then from there, see what happens. Because also when we build out this first part, our perspective can change on what we see for it, what we see would be good for it. So I want to start with that and basically come back to these features. And we might not even have the feature that we want the most on our list right now. It might come to us later. So I kind of just want to punt the idea of thinking about sharing the grocery list till later and focus on the top 4 or 5 that we're going to implement right now. And then jump to that, consider that when we're ready for the next step of taking the grocery list to the next level, or until somebody not knocks on our door, but like uses the product and is like, hey, I would really like to see that sort of thing, right? I guess that's my thought on it right now.
The top 4 items I think would be a solid start to the grocery, and I think would really help somebody get through the grocery in a reasonable amount of time, and just help them be able to cook from the recipes. I know sometimes people don't want to go to the store when they have to get something that's based on a recipe, because it can be a lot of details. But if you have all your recipes in Saffron and you literally click a button and this list is sitting in your grocery list, it is so nice. I just have really enjoyed using the prototype, and I can't wait for it to come out in the app and let everybody try it. I think they're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think it has a lot of potential, and I think our MVP for the grocery list is going to be those 4 features. That'll give people like a good chunk to work with, and they'll be able to see the value of the grocery list and be able to try it. So I think that's a good place to start, and that's what we're going to be working on this week, is to get this stuff into designs and then start programming it and kind of getting a prototype that everyone can try and release that. So that is it for this week of the Saffron Podcast. Thank you all for listening.